Hey, Professor Home here. Welcome to part 3 of our web page layout using the JLC site. And we're going to be working with our CSS to do some design work. And again, CSS is the way web designers design. Whereas in the past it used to be a lot of Photoshop work and slicing up images, now we can control a lot of the colors, the fonts, even the way things are laid out with CSS, which code, and it makes it really lightweight. And the file size can stay real small, and we have a lot of flexibility to make changes and to adjust widths and sizes and all that. So we're going to look at some of the CSS right now, and we're going to start off by adjusting our colors, and then we're going to adjust our widths and padding and some of that. So, and that'll be a little more of the tricky part as we try to get 3 columns laid out. But we'll work with the colors first, but just a quick tour of our CSS. And we're starting from, the kind of the outside in. And in our CSS document, which is nothing more than a text file. It's just a text file, and it just uses a system where it basically identifies an element like body, header, address, nav, HTML elements, or they could be IDs. They could be sections of the page that has either a standard name or they have ID names, which are specific names that we give them. Even here's one where it's just using an asterisk. And basically the way it works is you identify an element, then inside these curly brackets, it uses different declarations to style that element. And it basically is using kind of a property value system. So the property could be background color, the value is the color. Margin could be the property, and the number could be the value. There's widths, there's font families. It's basically property value kind of setup, and all of these are called declarations, and they're all together, they're called a declaration block. So that's what we're going to be working in. And even the very first one here, it uses an asterisk, which is a wildcard. Maybe you've used that in Excel or something, but basically what it does is it wipes out all the default spacing. And what I mean by default spacing, we're going to be rewriting some of that, and that's what that does initially. And again, a lot of this is done, so I can't show you this from the beginning. But HTML puts a background color behind everything, which again is the HTML background color. Then there's the body background color, which is white. There's a background color of the nav section. There's going to be a background color of a side section, which will be the same thing as the green. But I'd use some grays just to be default right now, and obviously this brown color is going to change, and there's even a hover color we can change. So when you hover over this could change color, although it looks kind of neat with the same color. When it almost looks like it's getting transparent. I like that kind of look. All right, so anyway, getting back to our CSS, this is some of these things. It says individual sections of the page. So there's the header section, address section. Those are the ones we created. The nav has a whole bunch of things. It has an unordered list, it has line items, it has the links, and it even has a hover state. So we'll look at that. It's not a whole lot, but the nav is the section, and then it basically uses child elements. So inside nav is an unordered list, inside nav is a line item, which is also inside of the unordered list. This could actually be nav ULLI, but basically there's a space indicating that there's a child relationship. And these things, these A tags are the links. That's what, and there's all these properties here, so they could be set up to look like buttons. So obviously it's a lot more code to make them look like buttons, but it's certainly better than generating a whole bunch of images from Photoshop. So that's what we're going to work on, and we're just going to change some colors. So we'll start with the top, but here's our address block. Now our header's fine. Our header looks okay. From what we saw, our header looks fine. That's the way it should look. We want to change this black color right now, and we want to change it into whatever color you used. I'm going to use my colors, you use yours. So for the bars, I had, and I wrote it down, and it was, C3A868. Now that's what I had. You probably have a different one. You should have a different one. The chances that you use the same color as mine is rare. So I'm going to go look at my image. And that's what I want. That's the color that I want. So that was real easy to change that color. And I'm going to change this one down here as long as I'm doing that. And whenever I can, I'll just highlight and copy, and then I'll go find footer. That's part of the footer, and there's my background color of footer. It's black, but I'll paste in my new color. And then when I go to look at it, there's our background colors. They look good. All right, and now I guess I'll focus on my nav section over here, and that's what I'll do next, moving down. There's the header, we did the address, nothing else I have to do with address right now. We may want to change our padding. Actually, let me take a look at that. I have a padding set up here, and that's the distance from the edge of our body in. So I think I put a default one of like maybe 24 pixels. So if yours is closer or further away, you could change this padding left, moves text over to the right. It's left justified text, but it's moved over to the right. And even if your text color is different, my text is white. So if you wanted, this is actually text color. Color means text color, which is kind of confusing sometimes. When I put that on a quiz, I always put multiple choices, font color, text color, and people always get that wrong. I missed an E here. But it's just color means text color. So even though there's a background color as well. So moving on to nav, we won't worry about float, but float actually makes it move to the left of the next element. That helps set up our 3-column setup. And we also have widths. Widths are going to be important because in order to get them set up in 3 columns, we're going to have to use our width and then subtract some of the padding that's in there because it doesn't include the padding that's inside there. That gets treated as extra space, which will make it too wide to fit 3 columns in our layout. So we're going to have to fix that. But as far as background color, let me change this. And this is my nav. And I think I'm looking at my sheet. I had F5, E2, and 2B6. And we'll talk about, and something's wrong there. It's showing up in red. F5, E2. I have too many numbers there. F5, E2, B6. F5, E2. I have too many 2s. That's why it's coming up red, because a hex only can have 6 digits, or it can have 3. If they're all the same, it'll have 3, like FFF. So instead of FFFFFF, it'll use FFF. Okay, so, but for this one, it has 6 digits. And it does that so it doesn't have to have like 9 digits like RGB numbers would use. Okay, so that's the background color for nav. I'll just check it out, make sure it looks okay, and that's what I want. I'm obviously going to want to change the button colors and some of the things with the buttons, so I'll keep moving on. And I'll move down to nav UL. It says list style none. We don't have to do anything here. That just takes away the bullet. I also have a property here for nav LI. That's the line item. That's like an individual item of a list. So you had a bullet list. Each item is a line item. And I have a distance creating space between the buttons. That's actually, I don't know if I go on here. Let's see if it shows up in here. And I'm like, yeah, and there it's showing. It's actually the margin below here. Now we're actually seeing some space here, but it's actually the margin below. That's where that margin bottom, I think that what I have there, that's where that's coming out. Now we're going to move on to the link. Now these are links, and the reason we style the entire link is so that the whole area acts like a button. You don't just have to click on the text. It treats the whole like a box. It actually creates a button. So that's why we do that. And there's actually a property called display block, which allows for us to put a width on it. And we'll have to possibly adjust that. So we'll have to look at a couple things here. But all that we have to worry about for us, for what we're doing, since most of this is already done, there's even a font size here, which I don't have anything in there, so it's just using a default. So we're going to make it my green color, which I think I'll go in here and fix this, which is going to be 465612. And they should be green. Yep, and that's what I want. So those colors look fine. And also font size. I'm not going to put anything for font size right now until I need. Font weight is bold. Color is white. FFF is white. There's padding around here, and let me just take a look at the buttons for a second. Take a look at the padding. The padding is the distance around the text to the edge of the button. So if you want a little more bigger buttons, you would actually add more padding. And we're using pixels right now for padding, so you can go and add, and the way this works, it goes top, right, bottom, left. So it goes in like this, top, right, bottom, left. Or it goes like trouble, TRBL, like a diamond shape, and it goes clockwise. So it goes again, top from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. That's the way these work in order when you're working with padding. So this is the top, and I'm going to add more. I'll make it 6. And then it's 6 on the right, and then I'll make it 6 on the bottom. And then I'll leave it 8 on the left. I'll give a little bit more on the left side, although I could make them even. If they were all the same, I wouldn't have to put 4 here. I could just put 1. But just so I'm showing how these work, it's top, right, bottom, left. The width, there's a set width here, and I'll put like 120. I'm not sure where I got that width from, but I'll check it out. There I made it a little bit shorter, so I'll put it back to what it was because that was fine. I may not even need a width there, depending on how we do the padding. And display block, that makes it act like a button. There's a border on here, 1.5. I'll make it 2. I'll make it a little thicker, and we'll make it white. I'll make it like 2 pixels and see how that works. And there's also border radius. Now I have it at 0. I'm going to put it at like 10 and see what happens. And now we have kind of round cornered buttons. And again, if you'd want to put more padding on these buttons, that's fine. You could put more paddings, make the buttons look a little bigger, but they look okay right now. We're also going to put a drop shadow on here. And to do a drop shadow on here, it says go to www.cssmatic.com to generate drop shadows for buttons. And you might think, what is he talking about? Well, it's a bunch of code to put in a drop shadow, and it's kind of hard to type. So if you just go to a website, and you could even type in box shadow generator. Is how I usually do it because I never remember what the site name was, but it usually CSSmatic is usually the first one that comes up. So I'll go to there, and what it does is, it gives you a visual kind of feedback of what the drop shadow look like instead of doing guesswork. So I could go here and go to box color and just choose some kind of green color just to see what these buttons will look like. The green doesn't matter; that's not really going to show up. But what I do want to look at is this drop shadow down there, and I'm just going to make it a little less. I'll make it like, they're just little buttons, so I'll make it like 5 maybe. I'll put this at 5. I'll always keep these the same. And they're going over. That means they're going to the right and they're going down. The blur, I'll leave the blur at 5, which is fine. Spread, you don't really have to change that. That makes it actually kind of thicker and harder, so you don't have to change that. Shadow color, we'll leave it black. Oh, you can make it gray. And they do have an opacity here. So if you want it lighter, you don't have to make it gray. It's at 0.75. I might take it down to like, 40 or something like that. Might be fine. Maybe even 30. I don't want really noticeable shadows. It's not necessary. I just like a little shadow there. So 30 is fine. Maybe I'll break the difference and go 35. And I'll just type it in. So this is going to website, and then you might say, well, what do I do now? You just copy this text, go back to your CSS file, and I'll paste it right after this. And I could even tab these in so they look nice. And there it has all the properties. It's even using an RGBA property, which includes an alpha. So that last property we used was alpha. So it uses RGB numbers and then an alpha. That's what RGBA is, and you'll see that a lot more now. And these are all those other numbers we put in there. And some of these things, WebKit and Moz, are just extras that help them show up in certain browsers because it is a newer version of CSS that it's allowing drop shadows. So that allows it to work in some older versions of browsers. And it may not work in all versions. Some versions of Internet Explorer, you might not even see the drop shadows. Even the round corners sometimes can be an issue in Internet Explorer. But for now, if I go here, there's my drop shadow. It looks nice. And if you're seeing that blue, that's because I'm actually in this. So I'll go to just my nav area and go back here, and you'll see blue around the nav area, but not on the buttons now. So if I wanted more space in the buttons, I could adjust that. And what we're going to have to do next, I think this is where we kind of ended up when we did this in class. What we're going to have to do next is kind of fix up our widths, because I think we have all the colors taken care of. We're going to have to fix up the widths. Oh, we didn't do the background of this, so we'll do that next time. And we're going to fit the width so that everything fits in this area really nicely. And, there's also some issues we have to worry about, because if this text gets too big for the area, it's going to go too far. We might even delete some of this text to make it work for now, but I think we're okay. So let's take a break, and then we'll possibly finish it up in the next video.